Sneha, a lot of people who come, to our classes and say, oh, now I want a transition. I want to step out from, I know I'm asking for you because if you ask, you'll say, oh, they will capture me asking this question. So let me ask it for you. So I want to transition. I want to jump out from employment to entrepreneurship. And, I don't know how to do that. I don't know how to navigate. And is it the right thing to do? When is the right time to do it? Could you give us sort of snippets because you've been there yourself? And what should we expect on the other side of entrepreneurship?
I definitely think entrepreneurship is far more glamorous on the outside than it is on the inside. So I said, I want my own business, and I envisioned myself. I don't know what I envisioned. I think I just envisioned owning something and that's it. But actually, of course, there's so much more to it. When I decided or started dabbling with the idea of being an entrepreneur, initially what I did is I tried a startup idea while consulting. And I think I was too scared of losing that paycheck, to be honest. I just couldn't go from being a finance, being in the finance industry, having a steady paycheck, working from one promotion to the next promotion, always knowing that you're growing, to then having no paycheck and no certainty and no kind of ladder. And so I thought, okay, fine, I'll find a halfway house. I'll consult and then I'll work on my startup. But what ended up happening is that I wasn't all in. And the consulting gig always took priority because I had a boss and I had deliverables and I had no structure on the entrepreneurship side. So I just didn't feel like I was progressing. And then when it came to Uncover, it was the first time that I said, okay, there's no paycheck. I'm all in. I believe in this idea. I literally poured my entire self into this idea. That is everything from the hours I spent to what I dreamt about, to what I was thinking about in the shower, and all for no money. So I was working harder, earning less, but I think it was that belief in the idea. And so I think my one thing on going from corporate to entrepreneurship, it's not glamorous, it's hard. There isn't a steady paycheck, but if there is an idea that you love enough and that you believe in a lot, and you go all in, that's really what it takes, I believe, to build a business. And so I wouldn't advise anybody to do what I did, which is try the halfway house. Of course, I do think, I always say entrepreneurship is a luxury because I really do believe that, there are real bills to pay. There's school fees. And I think one of the biggest things I realized is I had a partner that was able to pay the school fees for my kids. And, it is one of the realities of entrepreneurship that to actually take that plunge and to build that uncertainty in, it is a luxury.
Yeah, true. It's luxury. I say I'm the shareholder, but I know who the real shareholder of my business is, sitting somewhere behind there. You really need sort of that security. It's really a luxury, but I think one can sort of, if you plan to do it, then start thinking sort of ahead. One of the things that people don't know about entrepreneurship, when I started my business, all I used to do as a CEO, I used to pick up the phone and call the IT manager. I don't know, whatever. Then I realized I'm the IT manager, I'm the tea girl, I'm the cleaner, I was like, those were good times, but I've learned a lot. And I think it's to really pay attention.
What kind of mental fortitude does it take to move from employment to business? Because I believe most of us want to walk around and say, I'm a businessman or a businesswoman. What does it take to take that leap of faith?
The mental fortitude required to move from corporate to entrepreneurship. So, I think it's huge. Like my personal journey over the last 4 years and kind of that mental strength actually that we've had to build as founders has been a very critical part of the journey, because I think that I think the most important traits that an entrepreneur can have is resilience and grit. I think, there's technical skills, there's funds, there's everything, but actually I think resilience and grit is what defines entrepreneurs that succeed and don't succeed, because the bombs will keep coming. Every day, not every day, but maybe every week, there will be another bomb that explodes. And it's every time you fall down, can you pick yourself back up? That I really do believe defines successful entrepreneurs from unsuccessful entrepreneurs. And then I think the second thing, when you are in employment and you have a title at a very well-known name that you can sort of attach to your identity as a source of validation, it gives you a lot of self-worth, right? And suddenly when you're still, okay, technically I'm a CEO, but it's of a company that was, incorporated a month ago that I created. I mean, it does take a lot of mental strength to sort of make that transition. And then the last thing is, you really put yourself out there as an entrepreneur. I was never a big social media person. I was never a big LinkedIn person. And now, of course, it's our business. We're always posting, we're sharing on Instagram. And so you have to deal with the fear of failure, because especially in the early days, there is any startup, as you know, is risky. So when you're in a much safer place. So to deal with that uncertainty, but 4 years in, has it been hard? Yes. Have we built significant mental resilience? Yes. And I definitely think it's worth it. Like I said, high highs, but very low lows, is how I describe the entrepreneurship journey. I think there was a question around starting in COVID. And, some startups don't even last 2 years. How did we make it to 4? And what were the key things? I think in the first 2 years, nothing can substitute the hard work, right? Like that first 2 years, COVID, no COVID. I think it was really the hours, the grunt work, the setting up the foundation that was critical. Obviously, COVID made it harder in many ways, just because people weren't taking meetings, and you're trying to sell that idea. You're trying to convince people that what you're doing is worthwhile. But I do think that COVID also had many benefits as well, right? And it's how you take it. So one thing is that everybody was at home, and the skincare category was flying. Like nobody was wearing makeup. Nobody was going to restaurants. Nobody was putting lipstick on. So when we were talking about how there was no skincare brand that was homegrown, and then, Good Life was looking at their P&L, they were like, wait a minute, our fastest growing category and you have a solution for it? That's cool. So I think with every situation, there are pros and there are cons. I think also in the early days, I don't know if it's as much about traction as it is about the story and that vision that you want to build. And so, we were able to create a very clear, simple story about what we wanted to build. And when people looked at it, they were like, oh, this makes sense. So I think having that clarity of vision as well was really important. And then I think the last one was around, I'm not a formula scientist. So what am I doing, building a skincare brand? I think it comes to authenticity. So we were very authentic about who we are as founders, and we had a lot to offer, right? So I, had finance and strategy and business, and I'd worked across markets and really understood P&Ls and profitability, unit economics, all of that. Jade had basically built global brands across, I think, the world, but Kenya, Nigeria, Asia. And so we talked about what we had to offer. And then for what we didn't know, we had a formula scientist that joined our team to enable our vision, but we didn't pretend to know. And we presented that complete team, the complementarity in our skills. And I don't think it was ever an issue because we had a formula scientist. And one thing about startups is it's very important to get people to do things for you for free in the beginning because you don't have money. And very funny story, we DM'd a formula scientist in the US. She was from L'Oreal. And we said, hey, do you mind chatting? And she responded, like, okay, cool. And so we pitched our idea and she said, okay, I have a non-compete with L'Oreal, but I can help you. And so she came onto our pitch deck as our chief formula scientist, for no money, but obviously very significantly experienced. And, we learned never shy away from asking, because at that time we just needed the support.